Welcome to the Tao of Our Understanding Recovery Podcast. In this podcast, we discuss mystical works of literature and how they relate to recovery. We hope you enjoy today's podcast episode.
Hello, this is Buddy C. Welcome to the Tao of Our Understanding Recovery Podcast. Today we have Amy and Marla and Craig and Chris. Good to have everyone. We'll be talking about the 22nd verse of the Tao Te Ching. If Sensei gets to make it, he'll come in and we'll talk about from a Zen perspective, but we're going to have a meeting, and during the meeting, we're going to talk about this and whatever related to recovery that we need to. A couple of announcements. I want to announce dailyaaemails.com. This link takes you to Transitions Daily. If you guys are not aware of it, Transitions Daily puts out a daily email. It's free. With most of the readers that we use in recovery, you've got As Bill Sees It, Daily Reflections, 24 Hours, Thought for the Day, some very cheesy acronyms. When I started helping with transitions, they were a lot worse, and I've corrected some of them over the years. We're up to over 18,000 now. And we have a daily podcast where someone from around the world reads just the words, no commentary, reads the email. We've got readers. Craig did 2 months. I've done a month. We've got a new lady that's doing this month. Kate.
My friend from Edinburgh, Kate. I have actually met Kate.
She's doing a good bit of it. It's her and Kirsty still has some. So it's the two together. Some days it's one and others it's the other. We have folks from all over the world that are reading that. So you can find that. Your podcast aggregators, just look for Transitions Daily and it'll pop up. You can go to dailyaaemails.com and that takes you to the links to where you can see how to join and all those things. Still have our nightly 9 p.m. Eastern. Every night of the year, have an AA meeting at that time. On Friday nights, we do a breakout that Amy hosts. And I fill in occasionally on other nights. I no longer have a night that I host. So that's just worked out good. I'm very grateful for that meeting. Grateful to have been involved in getting that started. It's one of those things I look back on, and I'm grateful I was able to be used for that. Any other announcements we need to talk about, guys, before we jump into the 22nd verse?
I listened to Amy's interview last week, and it was brilliant. You know what? Those guys are hilarious. Amy, I think you must have had such a good time with those guys.
Yeah, it was really, really fun because what you guys don't get to hear is like the hour or so before and after what we actually recorded. And yeah, you know, it's like we do on this podcast. It's like, oh my gosh, I wish we were recording that before the meeting, or I wish we were recording that afterwards. But yeah, it was such a good time. Such a good time.
When he was asking you the questions, when he was asking you the stump the thumper book, the stump the thumper questions, I was screaming at my radio, and I got them wrong as well.
Well, and I told those guys, I was like, how dare you trick me? Because you didn't say I'm a literal person. Like, I'm black and white. Like, it either balances or it doesn't, right? It either ties back or it doesn't. And so when they didn't say it like verbatim from the book, it threw me off. And I'm like, I panicked a little bit. But then, of course, I don't know if you heard me, but then I was reciting it as he was reading it. And I was like, see? But yeah, it was still a lot of fun. My ego had a lot of fun with that too.
It was a great interview. Well done.
Thank you.
Great podcast. If you want more of Don and Sam off of the AA Grapevine, you can go to Boiled Owl, search for Boiled Owl. That was their podcast before they committed to AA. They actually do that podcast for AA. So it's a really good, it's a good podcast. I've heard a lot of good folks on that. Craig, our Facebook group seems to be doing fine, clicking along.
Yeah, it's taken over. Yep, and transitions, just we talking about the readings in the podcast. We've got the transitions page as well. I don't know where people are coming from, but that just seems to be growing every single day. They're not incredibly active groups, but when people do post into it, there's so much wisdom coming out of it. So the Facebook page there for transitions and this podcast as well. We're going through another phase with the AA page that we run as well, where the Arakan Army is obviously looking for recruits. So I'm getting about 30 requests a day from people from Burma.
Literally.
I just don't know where they're coming from. Well, obviously Burma, but I just don't know how they keep finding that group.
It's the initials for something. It's
the Arakan Army, yeah.
So anyway, it's just crazy. 22nd verse. Now, is there anything affecting anyone's sobriety that we need to talk about today? Anything particular? Because this is a recovery meeting above anything else. So if anyone has anything that they need to discuss, it doesn't have to be Tao related. We can talk about that too. So,
well, I want to share a quick win. Okay. Normally when I download my jobs first thing in the morning, I am a raging bull and I just want to go into the shops and just tell everybody what I think of them. So yesterday I had this job came up and I was like, I just do not believe this. So I surrendered to what was. I went out and I'd done the job and I actually helped somebody and I felt really good coming out of the job because I got out my own way and did for somebody else.
How long have we been talking about you doing that, Craig? How many years? It's good you finally, that's good. I'm proud of you.
4.5 years.
Yeah. What is it? What is that quote, Amy? Sometimes quickly, sometimes really slow. Sometimes
slowly.
We can just call that and sometimes Craig-like.
Right.
You got this stuff works. It really does.
Do what, Marla?
No, I just was giving Craig some kudos.
I know. We pick on Craig entirely too much, and he doesn't enjoy the attention at all. We can tell, Craig was that little kid that sat in the front of the room, putting his hand up all the time. Pick me. I know. Yeah.
And the teacher's like, anybody else? Anybody else? Anybody else apart from Craig?
That's funny. All right. The 22nd verse. I want to read the Stephen Mitchell translation. Would anyone else like to read one of the others?
I have Guy Fu Feng and Jane English's version.
Go ahead. Read that one first for us, Marla, please.
All right, verse 22. Yield and overcome. Bend and be straight. Empty and be full. Wear out and be new. Have little and gain. Have much and be confused. Therefore, the wise embrace the one and set an example to all. Not putting on a display, they shine forth. Not justifying themselves, they are distinguished. Not boasting, they receive recognition. Not bragging, they never falter. They do not quarrel, so no one quarrels with them. Therefore, the ancients say, yield and overcome. Is that an empty saying? Be really whole, and all things will come to you.
Thank you, Marla. Amy, you want to read the Ron Hogan?
Of course. Learn how to stand still if you want to go places. Get on your knees if you want to stand tall. If you want wisdom, empty your mind. If you want the world, renounce your riches. Push yourself until you're exhausted, and then you'll find your strength. You can go far if you don't have anything to carry. The more you acquire, the less you can really see. A master takes this to heart and sets an example for everybody else. She doesn't show off, so people take notice. She's not out to prove anything, so people take her at her word. She doesn't brag about herself, but people know what she's done. She hasn't got an agenda, but people know what she can do. She's not out to get anybody, so nobody can get in her way. Learn how to stand still if you want to go places. That's not as crazy as it sounds. Get in touch with Tao, and you'll see what I mean.
Okay, I'll read to Stephen Mitchell. If you want to become whole, let yourself be partial. If you want to become straight, let yourself be crooked. If you want to become full, let yourself be empty. If you want to be reborn, let yourself die. If you want to be given everything, give everything up. The master, by residing in the Tao, sets an example for all beings. Because he doesn't display himself, people can see his light. Because he has nothing to prove, people can trust his words. Because he doesn't know who he is, people recognize themselves in him. Because he has no gold in mind, everything he does succeeds. When the ancient masters said, if you want to be given everything, give everything up, they weren't using empty phrases. Only in being lived by the Tao can you be truly yourself. That's not Zen. I don't know what is.
Well, I think they all kind of go that way too. They kind of have a Zen, but it's sort of like what I was saying before we started recording this meeting about not putting yourself on display, not showing your light, but, yet being, showing up. But people take that the wrong way. Anyways.
Yeah, you were talking about how sometimes people take this passive kind of, there's Sensei.
Sorry, guys. Here I am.
No problem, sir. Thank you.
As one of my salesman friends once said when we were late arriving in Klein, he said, well, we're late. How do you like us so far? I was editing. I've got a book coming out, as some of you may know, this year. And the editor sent all the little notes for us to answer. And I got caught up in that and lost track of the time. Anyway, I was right here.
Perfectly okay.
No problem, sir. What we did, we read the 22nd verse out of several of the translations. Let's read the Jonathan Starr, get you kind of caught up, and then we've got a question for you.
Do you want me to read it?
Please, sir.
Okay, surrender brings perfection. That's in quotes. So that must be an old Chinese saying or something. Surrender brings perfection. The crooked become straight. The empty become full. The worn become new. Have little and gain much. Have much and be confused. So the sage embraces the one and becomes a model for the world. Without showing himself, he shines forth. Without promoting himself, he is distinguished. Without claiming reward, he gains endless merit. Without seeking glory, his glory endures. The sage knows how to follow, so he comes to command. He does not compete, so no one under heaven can compete with him. The ancient saying, surrender brings perfection, is not just empty words. Truly, surrender brings perfection, and perfection brings the whole universe. I think we should have a caveat to say that he is also she here. I've taken to using S/HE for the pronoun.
How do you pronounce that?
She. Like Shahrazad, she.
She.
All right.
Well, this sounds very familiar and very Zen-like.
It does, Sensei. There's a lot there, all about the idea of the weaker. My strength is in my weakness, or my
right. Tai Chi or Jiu-Jitsu, those ideas, surrender, go with the flow.
That's what we find in recovery too, is that we have to come with an open mind in a surrendered fashion and give up and let go of the idea that we can work this or do it ourselves. And I found that same principle works with everything else too, not just recovery, but it's a model for the rest of life.
Isn't it also surrendering to the withdrawal symptoms?
Yes. And the acceptance of what is part of that too, Sensei. I think it really, because when I surrender to what is, or in this moment, it really gives me the ability to possibly see the next right action to take.
Yep. Gives you the space.
Yes. We had a question for you. Marla, would you present? We were talking earlier. How about presenting that to Sensei for me?
I was talking about a couple people yesterday, two different people in two different situations were telling me how I show up in the world. And, in the business world, I try to show up like business-like. I'm busy. Let's get the task done, and I'm done. People take that like that I'm aloof and that I'm indifferent and that I'm not friendly. And all I'm trying to do in the world, I'm just trying to walk through the world, minding my own business, being mindful,
right.
not being judgmental, not engaging in arguments or anything like that. I really don't live like that. It's very stress-free. But people read me like, I'm aloof and hard to get to know. And it's frustrating for me because I'm really trying to be very zen and comfortable, and people are making me a little uncomfortable.
Yeah, I understand. I've been in the business world myself. What kind of work do you do?
I'm an interior design assistant. I'm just assistant.
Okay.
I love it.
So I come from the design field too, and you typically run into a lot of personalities and egos, and it's commonly understood that designers are have other values than simply the money they're making, or so you fight hard for what you think is a better design. And so we can come off as temperamental, and we have what we call design arguments, where the whole team is in there fighting out the solution, yelling at each other and strongly feeling my idea is better than yours, of course. So we can come across that way. But let me send me an email and request this so I can remember to do it. I'll send you a paper I wrote on how to listen, basically. It's called the non-directive interview technique. And it's used I also did consumer research for end user research for new products and various things. And you learn a way of talking to people where you don't get into a snit with them. You don't get into an argument, my opinion, against yours. And yet you maintain a very vital dialogue. So I'll send that to you. It's kind of a practical guide for how to handle this situation. But okay. I think, just send me a note and I'll send that to you. Anybody wants that, just send to me. It takes a little time to use it. It took me about 3 years to be trained in it, where it was natural way of speaking and establishing rapport and interviewing people and bringing them out so they feel at home, they feel comfortable, and they feel like you're interested in listening to them. So it's almost mechanical, a technique developed by Carl Rogers in World War II, where he had to interview resistant draftees who didn't want to talk; they just wanted to go home. It was very interesting, and it works in groups or in individual situations. So I wrote a 3-page sort of white paper on the basics of it. And a lot of my Zen students and other people have used it and find it very helpful. Okay. Your relatives may be Southern Baptists, or and your family relationships can be touchy as well, as you know, not just professional.
My family's cool with my Zenness because it was with them where all my chaos came from. So they're very happy that I'm nice and calm these days. It's the outside world that
we come across as cold, aloof, and so forth in ways that we don't understand. They're professional people who actually have you do your spiel, and they videotape you, and then they show you, and then they critique the way you do it, or the way you stand, or the way. So mirroring another person, picking up their rhythms and their sort of timing in a conversation, all of these kind of things help. As I said, they're a little mechanical in the beginning, but after a while you begin to see why they work and put people at ease around you. So I'll send you that.
Thank you.
But I think that the Zen attitude is efficient, quiet, or get it done, get her done, you know. But it's also, I heard, I'm going to rattle on a little bit longer about this, buddy, if that's okay.
Please. Yes.
There was a book review show here in Atlanta where a guy named James Taylor, believe it or not, he wasn't the singer, but he would interview people at a library, and he was a writer himself. And I happened to catch one of his shows where the book was called Working with Neanderthals, something like that. And and this guy, in brief, I didn't read the book, but I picked up what he was talking about in this interview on television, interviewing the author. And he said, basically, there are three kinds of strategies or personality types or whatever at the office. One he called the politician, one he called the believer, and the third one he called something like the genius or something like that. So the politician smoozes the boss and kind of speaks down to the people under him. He, it's all about kissing up and, playing the political game and advancing that way. And the believer sees that as immoral, and, he just comes to work or she just comes to work. And he says, as long as I do my job, I shouldn't have to play politics. I should be able to do well and get promoted and so forth, do my job. That's called a believer, kind of a religious idea, or like Job, following all the rules. And then the third one, the genius, is the guy who comes out of the computer room and solves the problem of the day, but has quite a lot to do with creating the problems as well. And the politician looks at the others two as naive and immature, and they just don't know how things work. And things work, people to people. And that's the way he's working it. And the others see him as immoral and so forth. So he said the problem is not that there are these three kinds of strategies and behavioral modus operandi, that we all have some of each of the three ourselves, and we tend to be one or the other. We tend to lean one way or the other. So, but they don't understand each other. They don't talk to each other. They can't get clarity with each other. And that's where all the conflict arises from. So in the office setting, we have clients, you have bosses, you have partners, colleagues, and especially in group settings, there's a lot of pressure on. And each person feels that they want to come across very positively and move the project along, but they don't want to be criticized. They don't want to look like they don't know more than you know or whatever. So all of that complex human dynamic comes into play. And what I typically do is I look at all of my relationships as collaboration. And I regard Buddy as a collaborator, and I think Buddy regards me as a collaborator. And we're collaborating on this project. And there was a book published about this too that said all of the great collaborations were always two people. So we get the mistaken idea that we can collaborate with a group. You can't collaborate with a group. So if you're in a sticky situation where it goes off the rails, the thing I do next day, even a board meeting or something like that, sometimes happens, we have conflict arise. I get hold of each person individually and say, can we talk? And when we talk one-on-one, we get on the same page. But in front of a group, that's very difficult to do. But this particular technique I'm sending you, non-directive interview, has techniques to use in a situation like that. One is called reflection, and one is called deflection. When you're a moderator in a research setting, you cannot have an opinion or reveal an opinion about the subject because it biases what everybody says after that point. You have to be absolutely neutral. But sometimes people will try to pin you down and say, well, how do you feel about this thing? What do you think about this? And you say, well, so reflection is like this. It's, let's Well, that's a very important question, and I'll try to answer that question. But tell me first, what makes you ask it? What makes you ask that question? That's called reflection. It bounces it back to them, and they have to come forward. Meanwhile, you've dodged the bullet. And deflection is when you say, "Well, that's a very interesting point, and we need to talk about that. How do the rest of you feel about that?" You deflect it to the group. So there are like technical means and methods for handling those situations, and you can learn them. You have to practice them over time. You can't absorb it all at once and sort of shift your gears that much. But I find it helpful.
Greg has a question for you. Greg,
I just wanted to comment on what Sensei was just saying there about the reflection technique. I use that quite a bit with sponsees. So if they come to me with an issue, I kind of throw it back to them. Say, what do you think? So it's almost as if, when you say to them, so if somebody came to you with this problem, what would you tell them? So it's just really a process for them to step back, depersonalize themselves from it, and just look at things objectively, look at the pros and cons, and just weigh up really the best course of action for that. That's a great. I hadn't heard of the other one, the deflection technique, though. I like the reflection one.
It deflects it to somebody else. There are other parts of that, but it doesn't want to become obvious that you're doing this, and so you have to approach it kind of gradually and get used to relating to people that way. But if you do, it turns out you can handle a very sticky situation, a very sticky relationship, and get to a deeper level where it's not so conflictual.
Yeah.
And meditation obviously helps with that as well.
Yeah. Marla, when you're in those situations, are you afraid you're going to be misinterpreted? The reason I'm asking this is if you can bring the consciousness level up from fear into some service or love motivation, I find that for me, if I can do that, it makes the whole environment raises,
I agree with you on that.
Latitude. So for me, if I were in that situation, before I went in, I would say, okay, how can I be of help to whoever today? How can I show them love and kindness? How can I, those questions before you go in, kind of just plant a lot of loving kindness there so that's what you're walking into. That's the way I try to do those things.
No, I agree with you. Most of the time I get to that point, where I sit in the car before I do anything, go, just be loving and kind, just be nice.
Yeah.
Just, it's just
hard. Take a breath,
Also, people like always found the clientele who have their house designed are very entitled. They have a sense of entitlement that was very, I found rubbed me the wrong way a lot, but which is why I got off the field.
But it's their house, right?
It's such an emotional thing, buying furniture and doing an interior design. Right. It's very emotional. It's psychological. It's all those things. I get it.
Right. And they're going to have to live with it.
Yeah.
I find this as well. I find this when I'm doing my job. I'm in the floor coverings industry. And when we're talking about the sales guys, we say to them, look, we're not selling them a carpet. We're selling them the dreams. This is what they want when they come in the door. What type of feel is it for when they come in? And it's not really about what we want. It's what we're there for the client. That's really why we're there ultimately. I think that when we start taking our eyes off, that sometimes people talk to me as if I'm maybe a little bit inferior to them, but you know what? They're the ones paying me the money. That's the ones where the wages are coming from. And, at some point, the relationship's going to finish once we've delivered on what we've promised. I don't take anything personally. It's as part of the job. And if I'm not happy with it, then I know
retail design, we had this expression, we could have such wonderful, beautiful stores if we didn't have all these people.
You have
messing things up.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just wonder, I had a conversation with a sponsee earlier this week, and she was really convinced that these things that were going on in other people's lives, or these or like maybe she heard one person talking to another person and she took it so personally. She was convinced that their situations were definitely related to her, and I guess what I'm saying is she was looking for other people to validate who she is or was. And so I just wonder a couple of things. Is it really that the other people are just afraid of not being good enough, and that's why they're not comfortable with people on a spiritual plane that they're not on? Or could it be like my perception of their behavior is that they think I'm inferior or aloof, whatever word you used, so there's a couple of different things I was just thinking of, different ways to kind of look at it. Number one, I don't really know what's going on in their life. What are they really afraid of? I know that well, I don't know, but I can almost bet that they don't spend, several hours a week studying some spiritual text and meditating. Maybe they do, maybe they don't, but we're definitely on different spiritual planes. And again, is it just my perception of their behavior because they're not behaving the way I think they should? So then I take offense. I don't know.
But, it's important, though, that we can always flip it around, though. We always have to look within for that. If there's any correction to happen, it's with us, not them. So
that's the thing. It's like, what do I need to do now to show up differently? And, loving kindness is always a great way to do it, I guess.
I agree with what you said about get the job done. We're not there to hold hands. You do have to do a lot of hand holding with a client through a project. And if you just did what they wanted you to do, you're not really providing a professional service. And I had a partner. He was a consultant to mainly the home center industry. And he was an older guy, been at a long time, and he'd gotten into import and stuff like that. So we'd go on these calls together, and the client would say something really stupid about one of the people, they'd have a team there. And he would say, now be careful. Now be careful. He had a very deep voice. Now be careful, And he'd say, because when you do that, here's how it affects your client. Here's how it affects the customer. So he would do a deflection that instead of you and me arguing about who's right and the best opinion, it would say, now let's turn to our customer and talk about how doing this will affect them. So in the dialogue, if you can work the client in the sense of interviewing them and getting at what they're trying to express, then we call my department in business translations. And you become the translator. You translate it into a design. You translate, they can't tell you what they want exactly, but our sort of shibboleth or standard used to be in research, they can't tell you what they want, but they recognize it when you show it to them. They will recognize it when you show it to them. So we do all the materials boards and we do the sketches and perspectives and stuff and like that as presentation to form a line of communication. And in design, we have the great good fortune to be able to do this in a way that's not just you and I discussing in words, but we're showing pictures. It could be this, could be that, could be this, could be that. Here's a color palette. This seems to be what you're talking about. Here's another color palette, slightly different. So in some cases, you get to the point where they say, well, if you could put the best parts of this and this together, I think that would be ideal, But that's a lot of work, and that's why they pay you.
Mm-hmm.
Marlo, there's a couple of things I was thinking. I used to go to a lot of homes and make offers on houses and talk about selling houses and all those things. When I was in the real estate business. So what I learned was when I went in the house, I started looking at the pictures on the walls to try to come up with some commonality I had with the people so that they would get comfortable with me.
I'm sure that's a sales technique.
Yeah, exactly. But it's a way that I can show kindness to them too, because I'm communicating with them. I'm finding some commonalities. And the other thing I would do is I would express a weakness of mine. in the beginning. One that I used a lot was, I want to tell you up front, if we work together, that there's something that I struggle with, and I just want to tell you that I'm working on it. It's not alcohol. No, I wouldn't say that. It was that I struggle getting my phone calls returned. So I'm working on that, but if just have some patience with me. If it's the next day before I return your call, I know that's an issue, blah, blah, blah. Okay. And if I show a weakness to them, they open up to me every time. It was just incredible.
Yeah.
Craig, I would wear a diaper if that was the case. He says, I randomly wear that.
And I think this particular verse is kind of like that. It's about without showing himself, without promoting himself, without claiming reward, and without seeking glory. It's not that you become a doormat for people, but you understand they have the same difficulty communicating that you do. And so it's like a long-term process of getting to common ground. But I think the empathic thing that Buddy's talking about, just trying to surrender yourself to the situation, kind of observe it dispassionately, pay attention to what is happening. You certainly don't want to get into us versus them relationship with your clientele or with your colleagues. So it's really better, I think, to keep quiet maybe during a dialogue that you don't feel comfortable with, and then again take it up later with each individual to try to get on the same page. But if you do it in front of everybody, it can become a confrontational scene. They say that if there are three people in the room, one is the attacker, one is the defender, and one is the moderator. And then those roles shift between the three.
Marla, I would just be open-minded and open-hearted when I went into those situations and just respond like we learned,
Yeah, I mean, I agree. It's just, when a good friend said to me, you're really hard to penetrate. This was a good friend. She said, you're hard to get to know. You're hard to penetrate. And, my thing is, I don't have anything to talk about, really. My problems don't amount to a hill of beans. I'm like, a blade of grass, an ant.
Well, in the business, you said you're an assistant, but what part do you do actually?
I do the shitty jobs. I deposit checks. I pick up stuff and deliver stuff. And
so you're the schlepper and the gopher.
I'm the schlepper,
and you don't get involved in the creative design decision making and all that.
Not any longer. I just couldn't do it anymore. But I just wanted to. I'll update your library, whatever.
Well, my wife is like that too. She likes to be behind the scenes. She doesn't want an up front position, and she's very good at what she does.
Exactly.
And I think you just got to go with your personality. You don't have to change.
Thank you.
Surrender to it.
Yes. Did you see the set aside prayer that Amy put in the chat, Marla?
No, because I was listening to Sensei. So I wasn't reading that.
Yeah, that's all. I just keep thinking of that right now, Marla. Before you go work with any of these people, that set aside prayer can be. I've gotten to where I say it before I speak somewhere now, because it's a great version of get me out of the way and help me to just see the truth about everything that's going on. So maybe stick that one in your pocket.
I'm going to stick it into my pocket. Thank you.
Okay, I've got Amy Sheridan's email. I'm going to pick these up. If you put them on the chat, I'll pick them up and put them in an email.
Okay. You had a comment, Chris?
Yeah, this is a really good conversation for me. One of the things I'm struggling with in AA is sharing. At least I feel like I'm made to feel like I should be sharing more when I pick up, the things, when I pick up people speaking in the meetings. And so I still experience anxiety before meetings as a result of that. I feel like I'm made to feel like I should owe it to the people in the meeting to be profound about my my experience, strength, and so forth. And it is making me feel, I've always just been the kind that observes rather than, and I really like a meeting where I can listen. But I do in here. I have no trouble with sharing. I do share often. I'm trying to figure out why that is. But anyway,
we have this thing called threat level, and in most cases in these kind of practices, as well as in relationship marketing, et cetera, you try to create a very low threat level where anybody willing to open their mouth is unlikely to be criticized. And it's difficult in some cases because you're brainstorming about a product idea, or you're brainstorming about a project, and everybody's getting excited and they want their idea to be liked and so forth. But we need to create more forums where people can be listened to. And so I think that's part of what this is. By the way, I've got I don't have Marla. I have
you have Amy. I have
Amy, and I have Percival, Amy.
Yeah.
And I've got Buddy. So anybody else, please, wants this paper, please put your name in the chat and I'll send it to you. That is your email address.
Thank you. I'm so excited.
In the chat.
Amy mentioned in the chat, but Chris immediately came to mind for both of us was fear, that maybe that's a fear of failing or a fear of being misinterpreted or something when you're in a bigger group.
Mm-hmm.
I tried not to feel that I had to share. The only time I try to be quiet, if there's something I was going to share and someone else says what I was going to say, there's no reason for me to share. So I try to wait for me. But if I had something on my heart that I thought I needed to share, I would just share it because that's coming from your experience. And maybe fear related. I don't know. I would definitely talk to my sponsor about it though and see what he said about it.
Also, people in meetings don't have high expectations of what other people are going to say. I don't expect profundity to come out of everybody's mouth at a meeting.
Don't forget, we're all there because we're not all there, right? So don't forget that.
Yeah.
So look at the group of people you're trying to impress, first of all. But I think I'm glad that you said that, because I think here's a full circle moment for me right now is that we started talking about similarities and identification with, getting on the same level with people, or at least that's what I heard. And here, Chris, this is what it's about too. My profound sharing at a meeting usually is because I always share profoundly. That's what that sounded like. Oh my God, that's not what I meant. But like Buddy said, it's just my experience. And I love when the best compliment that someone can give me is, man, Amy, your share was so raw and it was so real. And those are the ones that I don't even remember what I said because I got out of the way and allowed the universe to speak through me. And it's just my experience. And that's, I think, what makes a profound share, if you will, just the sincerity of it, the genuinity. I don't know how to say that word. Just be your true, authentic self without trying to impress other people. And it's exactly what this verse was about. Stop trying to be such a bold, prideful person. Just be humble and program of attraction, not promotion.
Mm-hmm. Right.
That's really a way we can live our life, Chris, is by living a life of attraction. Going into situations like Marla was talking about. How can I be of help here? What do these people really need? I don't know how many houses I bought over the years once I figured out what they really needed. A lot of times they needed a U-Haul to California. Now they need a U-Haul out of California, but at that time they needed one to California. So I got them a U-Haul, or they needed a credit card paid off, or they needed this. They didn't really just need dollars. So if I met whatever that need was that they had, whatever that was, some of them needed to live in the house another 2 months. Just different things, and if I could slow down enough to hear what they really needed and keep my mouth shut, then it could work out. So, yeah, and all of that is part of that becoming empty. Sensei, I wanted to ask you too, before we're getting close to time already. This whole idea in this verse is that, if I want to become full, I have to let myself be empty. If I want to be reborn, I have to let myself die. If I want to be given everything, I need to give everything up. This idea that we have, that whatever it is that we feel is our need, we have to become empty in that regard. And that's very Zen-like. But I wondered, I hoped you could comment and speak to that.
Yeah, we have perceived needs, or felt needs, they're sometimes called in research, which are not necessarily real. We don't really need that. Can you hear me, everybody? Okay. And my headphones just told me connected, disconnected. And by the way, Marla, while I'm talking, if you can send me your email, I'll have them all. Need, we need to, and I think you have to fill in the blank, in order to do what? Like arguments or discussions come up around Zen, say, do we really need to do this chanting? Do we need to do this? Do we need to do this way? And what is left out of that question is, in order to do what? So in the Zen tradition, a monk or nun only has 7 possessions. They have a pair of sandals, they have a hat, they have some robes, they have a set of bowls, a bag, and I guess it's an empty bag, unless they put their bowls in there, I guess. And that's it. And then everything else belongs to the monastery. Everything else doesn't belong to them, so they're called homeless. And mendicant monks, go in the village and do takohatsu begging, even though the temple or the monastery may actually be wealthier than the village at that particular point in time. And that is to allow other people to support Buddhism. And so I'm sending this, by the way, so you'll get it in your email in a couple minutes. So the question of need, and I don't know, buddy, if you're talking about Maslow's hierarchy of needs, the food, warmth, shelter, and all that, then there's the higher needs. And the theory is that you have to provide for the basic needs before you can begin to pursue the higher needs. But in our culture, that means you've got to have your own house. You got to have your own kitchen, your own bath, your own car, your own, it's extremely, we could just call it wretched excess. If you look at the consumption in this society, it's just overwhelming compared to the monk with his robe and bowls, and
I was thinking
rice.
More on a spiritual level, Sensei. I was thinking more spiritual.
Yeah, the higher needs. So right. What do we need? And in Buddhism, the answers are pretty simple. We need to wake up. We need to discover our original self. We need to get beyond this constructed self. We need to get out of our own way. So you can express that need in a lot of ways. How you implement in everyday life was based on the Eightfold Path. And now, of course, we're in a very highly complicated situation. So it doesn't seem so simple anymore.
What we do in recovery is we go help someone else with their needs.
Yes. Yep.
So that's the action that we take to become empty.
If we need to be happy, we need to help others be happy.
Yeah, and if we want to stay sober, what we do is we help someone else. That could be our quote today, Amy, from working with others.
Yep.
What page is that? Here it is. Practical experience shows that nothing will so much ensure immunity from drinking as intensive work with other alcoholics. It works when other activities fail.
And that probably is true of any addiction.
Well, actually, Sensei, I found it to be true with anything. Yeah. That if I have a perceived need, I just ask that someone be placed in my path that I can help them with their need. It happens all the time for me. I had a lady in the real estate business that I didn't like. Actually, I don't think anyone liked her. She was difficult to get along with. And so I would pray for her.
I think I know that lady.
I would pray for her listings to sell when I needed something to sell. Yeah. Just so that it just humbled me to think of someone else other than me. You know. Any other questions for Sensei, guys?
It was a great meeting today.
Good to see you guys. You're my favorite group.
I know. Thank you for emailing in advance.
Yeah, check it out. If you have any questions, get back to me.
We're just trying to live in this fakakta world. Some semblance of happiness and contentment and gratification,
But everybody's handling us.
Everybody's bothering me.
Don't handle me.
Don't bother me.
We call it negative bodhisattva. Somebody's teaching you the Dharma in a way you don't appreciate. But it's still the Dharma.
Okay. They're showing us
they don't know it.
Sensei, they're showing us a bad example of how not to do it. Is that?
Yes.
Or it's a good example of bad behavior. What not to do. Yeah.
Yeah. So we learn it in reverse. Oh, I see my painting on your wall. Great.
Yes. Thank you so much. Yes.
Thank buddy.
Yes, I did. It absolutely is a perfect addition to my office here at home. So thank you.
It looks great there.
Mm-hmm.
It looks great, Amy. Well, thank you, guys.
I have more available. If anybody's interested, I have more.
Do you have a website where you show your artwork?
Huh?
Do you have a website where you show your artwork?
No, this one I just handle personally. If you're interested, I'll send you some pictures. And I can either frame it for you, which costs more because I pay for the frame, or just send it to you in a tube and you can get it framed.
Okay.
Hey, Sensei, do one for me, please. I'll pick out the verse and just be inspired. And
you're going to pick out the verse you want me to.
You do it.
Okay, I've got one that's about finished.
I don't even want to know. I don't want to know. I just want you to surprise me with it.
Okay, it's really a good one.
Okay.
I'll send it to you.
Thank you for your time.
When we come down in September for lunch, Amy's coming. Yep.
Oh, cool.
And so I'll get it from you then if you have time between now and then to do that for me.
Sure.
Just in a tube. I've got some frames and all. So.
Okay.
Anything else, guys, before we close? It's been a quick hour. If not, we will see you next week.
Hello, this is Buddy C. I wanted to make you aware of several recovery-related resources that I've posted in the episode description. These resources include a list of recovery podcasts, a free sober meditation app, daily recovery email, shared Google recovery calendars. Hope you put some of these resources to use and have a great week.
Thank you for listening to the Tao of Our Understanding Recovery Podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, please share it with your friends in recovery.